By late summer 2020, the investigation around Dr. Kira Lorne's property had intensified far beyond what any local agency could manage. The presence of federal personnel had grown from a handful of unmarked vehicles to an entire perimeter of temporary field structures, floodlights, and surveillance towers. The area around her annex and the dried creek bed was sealed off so tightly that even drones were shot down by anti-air interference. Locals joked that aliens must have landed. Officials insisted it was environmental contamination. Neither was true. A full geological scan of Kira's land revealed something unexpected beneath the annex chamber. A second cavity, deeper and larger, shaped almost like a circular bunker. The cavity had straight-line edges too precise to be natural and appeared to have been reinforced with metal sheets that reflected radar inconsistently, as though flexing or refracting the signals. It took 2 days for workers to break through the upper concrete slab. When they did, what lay underneath forced the project commander to request immediate clearance from Washington. The chamber was perfectly round, 8 meters in diameter, lined with thick plates of what initially appeared to be copper and zinc alloy. However, metallurgical testing later showed an unknown compound fused within the alloy, something almost glass-like but unbreakable by standard tools. The chamber contained a ring of jointed glass tubes attached to the walls, a drainage system leading toward the center, ceramic tiles arranged with mathematical precision, a central stone platform, nearly identical in style to the annex table, except this one had a carved basin large enough to hold a human body. But the most disturbing discovery was the smell. Not decay, not mold. A cold, sterile odor like a funeral home refrigerator that had never turned off. One officer described the chamber as feeling hibernated. Another wrote in his personal notes, "It felt like we walked into something that should have stayed sealed underground." In a recessed alcove of the chamber, investigators found 3 sealed storage trunks made of a hardened composite material. Each trunk was marked with the same identifier, RN01, RN02, RN03. The contents were catalogued, though much of the documentation remains classified. The unredacted sections describe stacks of diagrams showing vascular systems unlike any known species, chemical recipes written in Kira's handwriting, but referencing compounds not available commercially, glass slides containing tissue samples that moved under a microscope, photographic film showing blurry images of something floating in fluid-filled tanks, a map of a cave system beneath Marrow Ridge, annotated with Kira's notes and warnings. The final trunk contained a single item. This notebook detailed everything the earlier journals had only hinted at. Experiments, failures, subjects. Early entries described Kira's frustration with traditional cryogenics and embalming techniques. She believed human tissue could remain functional without decay if it could be infused, molecule by molecule, with the right suspension medium. Her theories suggested that death was not a boundary but a transitional gap where cellular collapse could be prevented if chemical replacement happened fast enough. But then the entries took a darker turn. Kira wrote, "Tissue retention successful. Neural flicker detected. And fluid must permeate all pathways. The host cannot resist. The small mammals show revival indicators. Need larger subjects." The log revealed she had moved from plant and animal samples to more complex organisms. Investigators noted references to Subject A, 27% neural responsiveness. Subject C, complete integration but insufficient cohesion. Subject H, movement detected after solution replenishment. The more the team read, the more it became clear. Kira had not merely studied preservation. She had attempted transformation. A thick waterproof notebook labeled Continuum, Primary Log. One entry in the log stunned investigators. Arrived today. Agreed to help in exchange for anonymity. There had been no mention of an assistant in Kira's life. No records of visitors. No second vehicle ever seen at her property. But several entries referenced this mysterious M. Handled sample extraction. Moved completed specimens to creek site. Insists we are close. Then suddenly the entries changed. Disagrees with Phase 3. Says it's unethical. He tried to leave. I had no choice. Integration successful. Remains conscious within medium. The final mention of the assistant was is adapting. His eyes track movement now. One investigator fainted after reading that line. A strange growth in the forest. As analysis continued, survey teams noticed something strange around the wooded perimeter behind Kira's property. Trees nearest the restricted zone grew in twisted, unnatural spirals, exuded clear sap that crystallized like glass, showed no signs of insects or decay, had roots that formed lattice-like patterns in the soil. One botanist described the forest as infected with a preservative instead of rot. Samples of the sap revealed compounds identical to the fluid inside the cylinders found in the creek. Even stranger, the sap contained microscopic organisms that survived boiling, freezing, and chemical bleaching. Organisms that vaguely resembled neurons. Local residents began reporting unusual sightings. Light moving through the woods without a source. A tall, thin figure standing near the creek. Whispers that sounded like shallow breathing. A shadow that lagged behind the body casting it. One man, a hunter with no interest in paranormal gossip, reported something unforgettable. He saw a woman in a white lab coat standing knee-deep in the creek. But she wasn't standing on the creek. She was floating inches above it. When he blinked, she dissolved into a haze as though submerged in fluid. By late 2020, the investigation turned openly hostile. All environmental teams were removed. All local personnel were cut out. A federal directive sealed the entire region under private corporate custodianship. The lab annex was demolished. The underground chambers were filled with concrete. The creek bed was rerouted. Satellite feeds were encrypted. Public explanation. Hazardous chemical disposal site. Area permanently restricted. Unofficial explanation. Something in those chambers was not dead, and it was not safely contained. During the chamber excavation, an analyst found something lodged between two metal plates in the wall. A fingerprint. Embedded in the metal. Not on it, in it. DNA analysis returned an exact match. Dr. Kira Lorne. And the estimated age of the fingerprint? Less than 6 months old. Yet Kira had been missing for over a year. The team responsible for analyzing the print was reassigned. Their notes vanished. Their access badges were revoked. One of them later confided to a friend. She didn't disappear. She changed. She's still here, just not in a form we understand. By early 2021, the case of Dr. Kira Lorne had become a collection of missing files, sealed lab notes, and scattered fragments of investigation that never aligned. What remained accessible was contradictory, incomplete, and intentionally scrubbed. But people talk. And the people who were closest to the investigation began to break. The analyst who submitted an unapproved report. One environmental chemist, Dr. Sheila Harmon, was among the few allowed to analyze the chemical saturation near the underground chambers. After weeks of study, she submitted a report directly to the project commander, without filtering it through her federal handler. Her report described preservation compounds not existing in any government database, organic materials exhibiting non-static molecular behavior, fluid mixtures capable of maintaining tissue responsiveness indefinitely. But the most alarming section was titled, Transient Cognition Signals. Sheila claimed that when electrical impulses were introduced to preserve tissue samples, she recorded spike patterns resembling basic neural activity. When questioned by superiors, she insisted she hadn't made a mistake. She said, "Something in that fluid recognizes stimulation." She was removed from the investigation that same afternoon. Her clearance was revoked. Her home was searched. Her research hard drives were confiscated. 2 weeks later, she resigned from public life and refused to speak to anyone connected to the case. Her final email to a colleague contained only one sentence. "The tissue is not dead. It is waiting." By early 2021, the case of Dr. Kira Lorne had become a collection of missing files, sealed lab notes, and scattered fragments of investigation that never aligned. What remained accessible was contradictory, incomplete, and intentionally scrubbed. But people talk. And the people who were closest to the investigation began to break. The analyst who submitted an unapproved report. One environmental chemist, Dr. Sheila Harmon, was among the few allowed to analyze the chemical saturation near the underground chambers. After weeks of study, she submitted a report directly to the project commander, without filtering it through her federal handler. Her report described preservation compounds not existing in any government database, organic materials exhibiting non-static molecular behavior, fluid mixtures capable of maintaining tissue responsiveness indefinitely. But the most alarming section was titled, Transient Cognition Signals. Sheila claimed that when electrical impulses were introduced to preserve tissue samples, she recorded spike patterns resembling basic neural activity. When questioned by superiors, she insisted she hadn't made a mistake. She said, Something in that fluid recognizes stimulation. She was removed from the investigation that same afternoon. Her clearance was revoked. Her home was searched. Her research hard drives were confiscated. 2 weeks later, she resigned from public life and refused to speak to anyone connected to the case. Her final email to a colleague contained only one sentence: "The tissue is not dead. It is waiting." Another insider, a security officer assigned to the perimeter sweep team, kept a private log. He described several incidents that unnerved his unit. Incident 1. Thermal cameras repeatedly detected a human-sized heat signature inside the restricted zone moving against the wind. Incident 2. A guard dog refused to cross into the area, barking violently at what appeared to be an empty clearing. Incident 3. A surveillance drone captured footage of the silhouette of a woman walking into the woods. Only her limbs bent and lengthened in ways inconsistent with human anatomy. The officer confided to a local reporter, off record, "There's something in there. It copies the shape of a person, but it isn't one. It moves like it's underwater." 2 days after speaking with the reporter, the officer vanished. His cabin was found empty, all electronics destroyed. His car remained in the driveway, keys still in the ignition. The reporter tried to follow the case but was visited by federal agents and warned to drop it. He did. The abandoned film project. In late 2021, an independent filmmaker named Ariel Case attempted to document the story of Kira Lorne. She interviewed local residents, retired investigators, environmental workers, former colleagues of Kira, the families of some officials who had abruptly relocated. Ariel's questions made people nervous. Some refused to speak. Others insisted they had been told to forget. One elderly resident, shaken even before the interview began, told Ariel, "The woman's shadow didn't move right. It lagged behind her. And sometimes, it looked like it wasn't hers." Another man claimed he had once seen Kira after her disappearance. She was walking through the woods like she didn't weigh anything. Her feet weren't touching the ground. Then Ariel made the mistake of filming near the restricted zone. Her camera captured something, a ripple in the air like heat distortion. Then a shape emerged through the distortion. Long limbs, blurred face, joints bending in fluid, impossible angles. Ariel screamed and ran. When she later viewed the footage, every frame showing the figure was corrupted with static. Within the week, Ariel stopped returning calls. Her studio closed. Her hard drives were destroyed in a small electrical fire. The last known version of her documentary was seized. Friends reported she became paranoid and claimed something was watching her from behind glass. She withdrew from public life entirely. In mid-2022, a historian conducting unrelated research stumbled across a misplaced envelope in a university archive. It contained a typed and signed document titled, "Notes on Lorne Case Do Not File." The contents suggested the author was someone involved in the original recovery of the stone vault. Among the lines, "We were told not to speak. We were told we misinterpreted everything. But I saw movement inside one of the cylinders. I swear I did. It pressed against the glass as though it knew I was there. I think it was trying to communicate." Another paragraph referred to something too significant to ignore. Lorne spoke about using the suspension medium to extend cognition beyond physical form. What if consciousness can persist in a fluid state? What if she succeeded? The historian attempted to trace the author. The trail ended abruptly. The document vanished from the archive a week later. Between 2020 and 2023, 4 individuals connected indirectly to the Lorne investigation also disappeared. A retired federal biochemist, a university lab assistant handling environmental samples, a land surveyor studying the restricted zone's soil, a hiker who uploaded footage bordering the perimeter. Their last sightings all involved the same area near Merrow Ridge. Locals whispered that the forest was taking people. Authorities insisted each disappearance was unrelated. But there was one detail no official could explain. Wildlife tracking tags from the area showed animals repeatedly avoiding one spot. A perfectly circular clearing where no vegetation grew. A zone that appeared chemically sterilized. A place locals called the Preserved Ring. The off-record confession. In late 2023, a junior member of the environmental survey team contacted a retired reporter. He insisted on meeting anonymously in a car at night with no recording devices. He was pale, shaking, and refused to take off his hood. His confession was short. "We didn't find her body. We found something else." The chamber wasn't empty. When the reporter pressed him, he whispered, "She wasn't dead. She wasn't alive. She was suspended, and she looked directly at me. The reporter asked what that meant. The man answered. Her eyes moved in the fluid. She followed me with them. The reporter tried to verify the testimony the next day. The young man was gone. His apartment was cleared out. His car was abandoned. His employer said he had resigned. The reporter never pursued the story again. By early 2024, the Merrill Ridge property was purchased by a shell company registered in Delaware. The land was sealed with barbed perimeter fencing, guards with night vision scopes, no entry signs citing hazardous waste, signal jamming towers, cameras disguised as wildlife enclosures. The cover story remained chemical contamination. But locals knew better. They heard clicking sounds at night. They saw lights moving without sources. They felt the ground vibrate like a heartbeat. One resident said, "Something is growing under there." Another whispered, "She's not gone. She changed shape." And somewhere deep in the forest, where even birds refused to fly, a faint sound echoed late at night. The clink of glass, soft, methodical, as if something was gently arranging jars. By early 2024, the truth about Dr. Kira Lorne no longer existed in any official archive. Files vanished. Hard drives were wiped. Physical notes were misplaced. Every academic, journalist, or scientist who tried to follow the trail ran into the same immovable wall. The federal government pretended the Merrill Ridge property didn't exist. But the land itself refused to forget. And so did the evidence that kept surfacing in ways no one could erase. The well incident of 2024. A neighboring property owner began digging a new well during a heat wave. Workers hit something hard in glass like 6 feet down. Thinking it was buried junk, they cracked it open. Inside was a sealed cylindrical chamber about 3 feet long. Within it, a human forearm. Preserved perfectly. Skin smooth. Tissue intact. Fingernails slightly overgrown. The fluid inside had the same bluish tint noted in the creek vault specimens. One worker said, "It looked fresh, like it had been preserved yesterday." But when forensic analysis was attempted, federal agents arrived within hours and confiscated the container. A brief lab note leaked after the seizure read, "Tissue composition incompatible with postmortem state. Cellular activity consistent with ongoing metabolic stabilization." Another line, scribbled in the margin, was more disturbing. "Nail growth indicates preservation occurred while subject was still alive." The container bore a code. KLS3. Kira Lorne, Sample 3? Nobody ever confirmed. Section the 2025 Student Research Team. A group of biology undergraduates from Missouri State University conducted a river ecology study as part of a summer project. Unaware of the Lorne case, they collected water samples from Blackwell Creek, including the restricted area. They sent the samples to the university lab. 2 days later, the lab shut down. Official reason: infrastructure maintenance. Unofficial reason: the water samples contained microscopic organisms that survived radiation, survived acids, survived sterilization, regenerated when cut, formed network-like filaments that responded to electrical pulses. One student wrote an anonymous blog post before disappearing from campus. "They had neurons. They acted like neurons. We triggered them with light and the patterns looked intentional. Like they were communicating." His final sentence: "The water is thinking." The 2026 Drone Survey. A retired engineer in Arkansas, fascinated by rumors about the restricted zone, flew an independent drone over Merrill Ridge at 3 a.m. The drone was equipped with infrared, LiDAR, electromagnetic sensors, high-resolution night cameras. He captured only 12 seconds before the feed corrupted. In those 12 seconds he saw a clearing in the woods, a perfect circle where nothing grew. At the center, a column of translucent mist rising like a pillar. Light refracted inside it, swirling in fluid motion. And then, a shifting silhouette inside the column. Thin, tall, moving in slow, graceful motions. As if suspended. As if floating. As if conscious. The engineer described it in a forum post before deleting his account. Something inside the mist turned toward the drone. The entire feed froze the moment it looked at me. His drone crashed seconds later. When he returned to retrieve it the next morning, armed guards were already there. They confiscated the wreckage. A whistleblower leaked a portion of the classified Continuum notebook, the journal found beneath Kira's annex. The leaked section had been torn from the original and showed signs of chemical damage. It contained a passage not present in the public version. Phase Omega, self-preservation. To preserve the body is insufficient. The vessel is temporary. To preserve the tissue is primitive. The tissue decays even when stabilized. I must preserve the essence. And then, the medium is the pathway. Consciousness can migrate through suspension. Fluid can carry identity. Below that line, written shakily, possibly during the final days before her disappearance. When the body fails, I will continue in a state neither living nor dead. A state where decay cannot reach. And the last readable line. Immersion begins tomorrow. Someone, likely federal agents, had scribbled next to it. Locate original immersion chamber. Do not open if found. A ranger patrolling the national forest adjacent to Merrow Ridge submitted an incident report that was removed from the system within 24 hours. But he kept a copy. In his notes, he described hearing a delicate tapping sound one night, as though glass was clinking rhythmically in the wind. He approached the restricted zone boundary. He reported a drop in temperature, static building on his uniform, fog forming in precise spiral patterns, a metallic scent, matching the preservative compound. Then he saw it. A figure standing inside the restricted ring. A woman, or something shaped like one, moving with fluid, wave-like motions. Her face was blurred as if submerged. Her eyes, clear and reflective, caught the ranger's flashlight. And then she drifted backward, dissolving into mist. He wrote in his suppressed report. She didn't walk. She floated. Her body moved like it was in water. I think it was Lorne. I think she saw me. He resigned 2 days later. The most chilling evidence, biological echoes. A classified lab report leaked from a private contractor working with the federal response team. The report described the chemical preservative recovered from the site as self-stabilizing, self-replicating, semi-conscious, reactive to neurological activity. One line stood out. The medium appears to retain pattern signals from preserved subjects. Pattern signals, which in neuroscience means memory fragments, identity traces, cognitive echoes. The report ended with, suspension medium may host distributed consciousness. In February, a local teenager uploaded a 14-second video to social media before the post vanished. The video was recorded near Merrow Ridge. In it, the camera shakes as the teen whispers, "Do you hear that? It sounds like glass tapping." Then a light appears in the trees, bending like refracted water. A shape forms inside the light. A tall, translucent outline of a woman with elongated limbs, moving as if weightless. Then just before the video cuts, the figure presses up against something invisible, like glass, leaving a pale handprint that glows for a moment. The teen screams. The video ends. Federal agents visited the family the next day. The teen has not posted since. Section The Final Theory, The Lorne Continuum. Experts who have studied the remaining scraps of the investigation believe the same conclusion, though none will say it publicly. Dr. Kira Lorne did not vanish. She completed her experiment. Her body? Irrelevant. Her mind? Transferred. Her essence? Suspended. Distributed. Preserved. Adaptive. She exists in a state between liquid and consciousness, form and fluid, flesh and chemical medium. Not dead. Not alive. Something else. Something preserved. Something evolving. Something aware. The restricted zone isn't quarantining chemicals. It's containing her. And sometimes when the air is still and the forest goes quiet, locals swear they hear the distant sound of delicate tapping, as if someone is arranging glass containers.